You are listening to a Maudsley Learning Podcast.
What that makes me think of, and this is a bit of a tangent, but hopefully it's relevant. I spend a lot of time thinking about how one can sustain long-term romantic relationships. And I think monogamy and the family unit is kind of under attack nowadays. And I think one of the problems with long-term relationships is, when you start dating someone, you get involved for the first time and you fall in love, you see them, they're a new person, they're a novelty in your life. And then with time, they start to fade and become more of an object in your universe rather than a person full of surprises and complexity. And I think one of the things that can help, keep a relationship sustained over many years is to do things, activities that can renew that sense of novelty of seeing again that person as though you were seeing them for the first time, seeing them as someone, a living, breathing, dynamic creature, rather than just this static thing with very, predictability often is kind of a relationship killer and a lack of spontaneity. And that's kind of what he said made me think about that.
I like that very much, Alex. I think that's very good indeed. I think it's true that one needs, people talk about working at a relationship, and I think there's truth in that, definitely, in that you can't just coast. You need to be mindful of that other person in the relationship. It sometimes sounds like a kind of routine hard work where you do this, I have a bullet point list, I must do this on Thursday with my partner, my wife, my whatever. But I think what you are pointing to is, what I would recognize is that one needs to have enough space in the relationship to be able to stand back and understand again afresh who this person is, because you can be under such pressure, particularly if you have children. I don't know if you do, but I mean, I certainly, when I was doing my training, in fact, when I was a houseman, because I went into medicine late, I was working 120 hours a week. It wouldn't be legal now, but I was. And I had 3 children, and I think I had 2 children when I was a houseman and 3, but by the time I was an SHO. And can you imagine what that's like? So I know all about that and how that does disappear. And I like the concept of predictability, because of course the whole point about an abstraction in this mechanistic vision of the world is that it becomes predictable. It becomes Laplace's idea of a universe where if you knew all the movements and the positions of all the particles, you could predict everything that happened from thenceforth. I mean, we now actually know from physics that is a fantasy and it is absolutely untrue. But nonetheless, things become stereotyped, they become dead, inanimate, they become jaded, they become cliches of themselves too quickly. And what you're saying is one needs to recover that life that is in the relation. And I like that very much. Yes, I think that's very true. I can't say I've always managed to practice it. I've done my best. But I think one of the interesting things is that when you are really in love with somebody, it takes me back to something I alluded to earlier. It's at the time as if, and everyone who's been really in love knows this, it is an absolute sense of uniqueness. I mean, there is nobody like this person in the world ever before or after, which is true. But also there is something absolutely unique about this experience, which is also true. And yet, of course, it is one of the commonest, most general experiences of humanity over thousands of years. So at the same time there, you see a really beautiful example of what I mean by seeing the general through the lens of the particular. And it doesn't take away from either particular or general. We need them both. And this again brings me to something very important in this new book, which is the idea of not allowing opposites or apparent opposites to collapse into one another, not to allow them to fly apart, nor to allow them to collapse into sameness.
To embrace the tension between them.
Yes, there needs to be a creative tension, which is not a negative thing, but actually a very positive thing. And in a way, it also, to come back to your thing about human relationships or close partner relationships, I mean, I've always felt that there are two kinds of problems. It's like two heavenly bodies that are circling one another. They need to have a certain distance. If not, they fuse, they collapse into one, or alternatively, they fly apart. What you want always is to have them circling one another. And the great thing here is that in a good relationship, a functioning relationship, the individuals don't sacrifice their individuality to the relationship. They grow their individuality through the relationship so that their partner doesn't sort of eat up and take away parts of them, but actually nourishes it. And if this is a reciprocal process, this is a wonderful relationship.